Hello and welcome to another video from Mr. Miz Nation. Once again we're talking F1 and this is basically just going to be an F1 2014 season preview, basically like the predictions but a lot more thorough, and basically about every team and driver heading into Melbourne, and obviously kind of more of an Australia preview as well instead of just a season preview. But first of all, before I get into anything, thank you for the support and the feedback on the bowl predictions video. It seemed to go down pretty well, gained quite a lot of subscribers from it, so welcome. And yeah, it was great to see some comments on there as well. But yeah, great to get into a bit of a discussion about that and seeing who agreed with me and who didn't. There was actually quite a lot of people that agreed with me, which was slightly surprising, which isn't very usual, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Also, this video is actually being recorded and edited on Thursday night. It should be up, well, it better be up on a Friday night. So bear in mind that I will not have any clue what's happened in practice. So this is before practice, so I may look like a complete idiot in this video tomorrow if a Caterham goes and puts it quickest in practice and I've got them ranked bottom of my predicaments. But let's actually move on to the actual thing, as I've had some criticism from certain people that I should get onto it quicker. But let's start with obviously Mercedes, the favourites. By far they seem the quickest and probably the most reliable. Williams might have something to say about that, but they did pretty much the most runs in testing and didn't really experience too many problems apart from maybe a few niggles in Bahrain, and obviously Hamilton's front wing crash on the first day of Jerez, but that feels like ages ago now, funnily enough. Feels like yesterday was, but yeah, very interesting. But there may be the problem with the team maybe getting a bit out of control. I mean, Hamilton and Rosberg, a lot of people don't think there'll be fireworks simply because they've known each other for a long time. Hamilton said in the press conference today that they should be okay since they've been together, well, not together, but they've been racing against each other for so long. They've been in these type of positions before, but this is a much bigger stage, and I think the key thing here will be the lack of Ross Brawn, because Ross Brawn, when he got on the radio, he could control the situation much like he did in Malaysia last year. Will they be able to kind of control the situation without him if it gets out of hand, the team this is, in terms of Hamilton and Rosberg, or will they just sort out themselves? It'll be interesting to see that, and I think it'll be interesting to see just the whole battle between the two of them. But I covered quite a bit of Mercedes in my predictions video, but I'll just kind of go back to it. So in terms of Hamilton, he's obviously immensely quick, one of the best free drivers currently in F1, along with Vettel and Alonso, you would say. But I think the big question is, does he still have all the variables to win the title? I mean, he hasn't won it since 2008, and you could say that was relatively jammy as well. Not to annoy any Hamilton fans out there, but I mean, can he adapt to the new rules is the question as well. I mean, a lot of people think Rosberg will beat him in that type of area, but the new tyres should benefit Hamilton as well. So he may be able to put it together, but can he put it together for a whole season? I mean, he just hasn't quite been able to. I mean, like last year, he won one race in Hungary and he had a lot of problems and he just wasn't consistent enough, really, especially towards the end of the season. So it's really a question of, can he be consistent enough? Can he have that raw kind of pace and consistency that he had in 2007 and 2008, if you count out China and Brazil in the last two races of 2007, of course. But that is a question really for Hamilton. Can he keep that pace and consistency going all season? And, well, can he kind of have a Vettel season, I guess I'm saying, basically. I don't know if Hamilton can. Which brings me on to Rosberg, who is obviously my favourite, as I pointed out in the predictions video. I really do think he will win the title, and I do think he probably will win in Melbourne as well. Most of the things I said in the Bold 5 predictions, but the question is also for him, will he crack under the pressure? I mean, he hasn't been in a world title situation really in his career, and this is probably his first big chance at it in a team that really can push for the title. I mean, he's got wins under his belt now, so he doesn't have that pressure behind him. But Hamilton, Alonso, Raikkonen and Vettel, they've all been there, they've all done it and won the world title. Can Rosberg beat guys with that experience and prevail, even with his even with his pros towards this new formula? Moving on to Williams now, who I also covered quite a bit in the predictions video, but they are obviously incredibly reliable by the looks of it with that Mercedes engine. But I think the big question, there seems to be a big question for everybody really, will they kind of have enough money to keep developing over the season to keep up with the likes of Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, probably Red Bull as well, maybe even Lotus potentially, although obviously Lotus don't have money, but they are very good at developing. So they definitely have a dynamic team, and Bottas and Massa, and I kind of think it's a new era at Williams as well. They're kind of ushering out the Frank Williams era, and kind of Claire Williams is coming in. There's a lot of new guys coming off. So Patrick Head left as well. Obviously he was still helping with the engines over there though as well. Yeah, it's definitely a new era at Williams, which could be started this year. But moving on to Massa, who's certainly maybe not, well, this is maybe a new era for him as well, I guess you could say. He could be very well rejuvenated, as I pointed out in pretty much every video building up to the season. I mean, can he fight the front again is a question. Can he? He hasn't won since oh god, well, I can't even remember. Probably 2008 something. In fact, I think it was Brazil 2008 if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure he didn't win in 2009. So can he win races again is the question, if that Williams is up to the standard. He really needs to beat his teammate as well, otherwise he could be under, well, maybe not severe pressure, but, well, maybe he could be actually. I mean, if he doesn't beat his teammate, then he could be under pressure. But I think Massa just needs a good overall season. I've said that for Hamilton as well, but he does need a very good overall season, because he usually seems to have a kind of good start, and then in the European season he just kind of goes a bit flat, and then when his job was under pressure at Ferrari, he usually had a very good end to the season. So he just needs to have that constantly good season, which is obviously going to be quite difficult this year considering how many reliability issues there'll be, but he needs to just make those standout performances count, and work towards a very good goal, and he'll obviously want to beat Alonso as well. Just thought I'd add that in there. And his teammate Bottas, who is the wild card in my opinion, because we didn't really get to see his potential last season because that Williams car wasn't up to scratch really. I mean, he beat Maldonado relatively comfortably. He did seem to have pretty good pace and flashes of brilliance when the Williams car was slightly good. I mean, Canada last year in the rain, he definitely is pretty good in the rain by the looks of it, and he obviously had that good performance in America as well. But it is important that he challenges Massa and he keeps up with him. This could be a very big year for Bottas as well, because if he beats Massa, then it will show he really can be the real deal, and he really can maybe become a world champion. But he needs to try and get podiums this season early on. He may, I mean, my dad went for him in my family betting, which I thought was a bit odd, but he could pull out a good result potentially in the first few races, so he's definitely one to watch out for, the wild card in my opinion. But moving on to Ferrari now, they definitely seem to be potentially hiding pace and sandbagging, but they're not really sure on their goals yet by the looks of it, and we may find out more tomorrow morning in Friday practice and then kind of qualifying as well, if not then in practice. But they should be up there. I mean, Ferrari always are, especially with Alonso. Well, they usually are, apart from maybe 2009. But I mean, they've got Raikkonen and Alonso, so if they aren't up there, they're going to be in serious trouble of losing those two drivers potentially to a better team. But moving on to Alonso, he definitely has a point to prove. I mean, he still hasn't won the World Championship at Ferrari. He'll be looking to win it this year, obviously. I mean, if he doesn't come first, he's mightily pissed off. But I mean, he will adapt to the rules pretty quickly. I think he already has, to be honest. So he's definitely going to be dangerous in the first few races. And even if that Ferrari isn't maybe up to scratch, like the Mercedes car and like the Williams car and other cars, like maybe Force India and McLaren, then he still should be able to drag the car up there. And I mean, with the reliability issues, this weak qualifying might not be as problematic, to be honest. Because he'll have people retiring in front of him if he doesn't retire, obviously. But I mean, he does need to also improve his qualifying. But then again, it's the same for Raikkonen. And also, obviously, Alonso, will it be his last year at Ferrari? There have been a lot of rumours about him going to McLaren, obviously, even with Ron Dennis back there. But who really knows with Alonso? He is a tough book to read, really. Moving on to Raikkonen now, he needs to beat Alonso in the first few races, in my opinion, to really cement any kind of status, maybe as a #1 driver, or even an equal driver. Because I think Raikkonen is going into the season as #2, even if Ferrari don't want to admit it. I think he is. I do obviously rate Raikkonen. I'm not saying that he's crap, but I do think that Alonso is slightly above him in terms of pace, but. I would bet money on him having a lot of reliability issues in the first few races, just simply because of his luck in the past. But it is he'll look to repeat Australia last year, really. But it'll be definitely difficult to do that, and his qualifying pro won't help as well. Both Ferrari drivers kind of have that same problem, that they're not brilliant in qualifying at the moment, probably because they're maybe older and they can't kind of pull that lap out of the bag like a younger Lewis Hamilton or Sebastian Vettel can, or any other younger driver, I guess, maybe Magnussen. Which brings me nicely onto McLaren. Ron Dennis is back in charge, which is going to be quite crucial for McLaren this year, with Eric Boullier also coming in. What's going to happen to Martin Whitmarsh? That may be a big story over the season as well. What happens to him? I think Martin Whitmarsh is relatively useless. Well, obviously, I mean, I can't say that, but I just did. But I don't know. I just don't really think Martin Whitmarsh is team principal quality. Really, I think he needs to go. I'm sure he'll find something decent in F1 at some team, if not McLaren, obviously, a good role for him. And obviously at McLaren we have the Danish sensation, not the Finnish sensation. Yeah, I've even written Danish in full capital letters to remind myself that Magnussen is Danish and not Finnish. Sorry about that complete cock-up in the last video. But I mean, I pretty much said everything about McLaren in the predictions video. But obviously Magnussen has that raw speed. He should be pretty quick in qualifying. A lot of people saying he's going to be Jenson Button. I agree with that. I think they'll both be equally good in wet, dry conditions, and I think Button will struggle to find that balance, as I said in the last video, that he likes, because it's just going to be difficult as a new car to find that perfect balance and that perfect car. But he will like the torque going into the corners, so it could help him slightly there. But Magnussen definitely has a good head on a young pair of shoulders, as I said. I feel like I'm repeating myself a bit, but he will definitely be up there. But I'm sure Button will also be challenging him all the way. That's definitely going to be another great battle to see, just like Hamilton and Rosberg. And this video is 15 minutes long and I'm only halfway through, so this is going to be a bloody ginormous one. But moving on to Force India now. This, by the way, is I probably should have pointed out at the start of the video that this is kind of my pecking order going into Australia. But Force India, they're definitely looking for podiums. That's what Vijay Mallya said at the start of the well, a couple of months ago, that he wanted podiums, and they definitely look like they could potentially do that. But they're definitely kind of in a similar position to Williams, if slightly worse off, because they just may not just have the finances to keep up. Like we kind of saw that last season, to be honest. They did start pretty well, so Till had some great performances in the first few races of the season. Same was De Resta. I think it was Bahrain that he had a great race. But it is quite crucial for them to try and keep up in terms of the development, unlike last year. But they definitely have a good driver lineup, which brings me on to their driver lineup, which is Hulkenberg and Perez. Nico Hulkenberg, he'll obviously be wanting podiums as well, to really cement his chances of getting a top-class drive for 2015. He's definitely one to watch this season again, especially if Force India can maintain their good car throughout the season. But I mean, he's normally stronger later in the year, so expect Force India to, or expect Hulkenberg to be maybe stronger later in the year, even if that Force India car is not maybe up to scratch as it was at the start of the season. But Hulkenberg, this is quite a big season for him, but it seems like every season is quite big for him, because he just doesn't seem to have the finances to get a top-class drive, so he just has to constantly perform every single year at a high standard. Moving on to Perez, he definitely needs a good season, and he needs to be a good rival to Hulkenberg. This is a crucial season after his, well, I guess you could say McLaren failure. I didn't see it that way. I think he could have kept at McLaren, and he wasn't doing too bad compared to Button, but I mean, that's F1 really. He needs to return to his old Sauber days really, where he's getting podiums and kind of setting the world alight really, and pulling great manoeuvres out, and not the McLaren driver that was pulling Banzai moves at Monaco, which were obviously great until he clattered into Kimi Raikkonen. If I think it was Kimi Raikkonen anyway, and obviously GB2ing it was Button in Bahrain. Nice use of alliteration by me there as well. Moving on to the world champions. I was about to say the world champion Sebastian Vettel, but the world champions Red Bull, who have obviously had reliability issues. The big focus kind of going into the new season, are they going to be able to flip and recover? But I still think they're going to make Q3 in Australia. I may be completely wrong after looking at practice tomorrow morning, but I really do think they will still get into Q3, but they will probably struggle in the race, and potentially DNF with reliability issues. But they will obviously be stronger at the end of the year. They always are, really, as everyone else is saying, basically. They basically have replaced McLaren in being the developing team now. So they definitely will be better at the end of the year, but the question is, will Vettel still be in it? Will Ricciardo still be in it to challenge the title? But that brings me on to Vettel's point that I don't think really many people have made, that he really just doesn't have much to lose this year. He doesn't have anything to lose. He's already won 4 world titles. If the car is poor, then he'll obviously be unhappy, but I mean, he can just go for broke this season, I have a feeling, because I mean, he's already won 4 titles. There is nothing to lose, and obviously he can't afford to make errors like Multi 21 again, otherwise the public are just going to get on his back again, and it's going to be a horrid season for him if that happens. But he just needs to have just a solid year again, really, and just not do anything like he did with Webber last year with Ricciardo, which brings me on to Ricciardo. He may have to aid Vettel in a title battle. That wouldn't surprise me if Red Bull did pull that team orders, but I think they will have pretty much planned that if it does come to that before the race. But really, he needs to start trying to get on pace with Vettel kind of towards the end of the season, kind of moving into the second half of it, because there's always going to be pressure from guys at Toro Rosso and everywhere else But I have a feeling Ricciardo's job should be relatively safe for 2015, so he'll just be looking to push Vettel and get good results. I mean, he's probably not going to win the world title considering Red Bull's struggles, but he's just going to be hunting for podiums in the season and maybe even that elusive race win. Now moving on to Sauber, the ultimate midfield team. They are well run, they're looking for solid points, but I think they're going to struggle to get them. They've just been stagnant in the last few years, really. They haven't really... They've got the odd podium here and there, but they've kind of been just all over the place in the points, and then sometimes out the points, which I guess isn't stagnant at all, but they were relatively strong in testing. I mean, they weren't horrific, they did have half decent reliability, but it really is kind of, they are the mediocre team of mediocre teams, which brings me on to their, in my opinion, kind of mediocre drivers. Less Sutil than Gutierrez, but Sutil, he will be good for feedback with the car. I mean, he's been in F1 for quite a while now, and he'll always get you solid results, especially like we saw at the first few races last year in Australia, of course, as well. But he may struggle with consistency. I mean, his Force India career did not end brilliantly, especially I remember that America crash. I'll never really forget that. But Sutil really needs to be his teammate. I think both Sauber drivers will be under pressure, especially Gutierrez here, who really needs to have some standout performances this year. I can't really remember one standout performance last year. I mean, you could say his one in Japan, I believe it was, where he finished 8th, but I think it was Japan, but I mean, that wasn't, compared to what Hulkenberg was doing, that wasn't good enough, really. And with to get De Resta and Van der Garde breathing down his neck, he really does need good performances, and he may struggle once again with a poor car, and I mean, he may struggle to get used to the new rules as well, so I have a feeling this could be Gutierrez's last year, but that's just my opinion. He really needs to have a good year. Moving on to Toro Rosso. They are struggling with Renault, obviously, much like most of the other Renault powered teams. But they will be important for Red Bull in assessing the problems with Renault and overall problems, because they can kind of help each other with that. So Red Bull will help Toro Rosso and vice versa. But they'll be looking to challenge for points again, but they may completely struggle. Maybe towards the end of the season they won't be able to challenge, but with Verne being a poor qualifier usually, and Kvyat kind of being unknown and kind of more of a rookie, it's going to be a difficult year for them, I have a feeling, to get into the points. But moving on to Verne, it's another important year for him. Much like Gutierrez's year, he needs to have good performances in and out. I do like Verne. I think maybe he should have got the drive over Ricciardo, but he's definitely under pressure this year now that he didn't get the Red Bull drive. No driver has stayed at Toro Rosso for over 3 years, so the pressure is really on for good performances. The only way I see him getting that Red Bull seat is if Ricciardo has a dreadful season and Verne completely outperforms the car, but that's going to be incredibly difficult to do, especially if he's breaking down constantly. And his qualifying, as I said, must improve, because he was constantly getting knocked out in Q1 last year and the year before that, really, which wasn't really helping him in the race, even if he did gain places. Moving on to Kvyat. So learning experience for him, really, to be honest. I mean, he's not going to get flipping taken out of the seat for 2015 after one season, in my opinion. I think that'd be incredibly harsh, even if Helmut Marko is quite decisive with his decisions. I mean, he should try to challenge Verne, but as I said, it is more of a learning experience. But if he does beat Verne, then it will definitely make him look incredibly good. But he could be out in Q1 in the first few races, especially because he may struggle with the new cars and reliability. So I think he may struggle in the first few races, but as the season progresses, he should get better. But moving on to Lotus now, the big strugglers, even worse than Red Bull. What have I got here? But they could be similar to Red Bull potentially. They could develop later in the season. They've definitely got the drivers, well, I should say driver, to perform at the highest level. So, will they be able to develop and get into the points solidly without Boulier? Is a big question really, and James Allison, of course, who's gone to Ferrari. So Lotus is a big year. If they don't do well this year, I can't see them doing well for quite a lot of years, to be honest. So, I mean, they have bounced back before when they were Renault and they had that whole Crashgate thing, but it may be a very difficult year for them. But on the flip side for Grosjean, he may be able to produce some of the drives of the season, to be honest, if he's in a poor car, because if he is in a poor car and he still manages to get into the points solidly, then he could potentially be put into a very high drive. I mean, he proved at the end of last season that he can really mix it with the big boys in a car that maybe shouldn't be up there. I mean, the Lotus was pretty quick last year at the end of the season, but you could say that he shouldn't have been up there. And I mean, Raikkonen wasn't up there constantly at the end of the season like Grosjean was. Well, he wasn't really. But he really needs to cement his #1 status early against Maldonado as well. The problem is that these two actually have a bit of history with each other in GP2. Not many people have pointed that out, that out of all the driver partnerships, Grosjean and Maldonado could potentially be the feistiest one, not just because they have a lot of crashes in F1, but also because of their history in GP2, which was also down to crashes, funnily enough. They seem to have avoided each other in their F1 careers relatively well. They seem to have hit everyone else, to be honest. So maybe if they just race against each other, then they'll just be completely fine. But Maldonado, on the other hand, really needs to prove that he isn't just a one-race wonder. I mean, Frank Williams said after that race in Spain in 2012 that he could be a future world champion, and he needs to prove that this year, otherwise he could be well, he's never really going to be under serious pressure with his money unless he has a horrific season, which, I mean, he did probably last year, to be honest, with Williams. But that could be repeated this year if Lotus don't get their act together. But Maldonado also needs to improve his qualifying, much like Vergne, to be honest, because he seems to usually join Vergne going out in Q1 usually, if it wasn't the rester. So he definitely needs to improve that, but with that not so great Lotus at the moment, that may be a struggle, and finishing races may be a struggle as well. I mean, he's the favourite to DNF. He's the betters. Everyone's picking him in the betting shops to go out first. Well, not first, but just to go out. Well, he might go out first. We're moving on to Marussia now, who I think will just beat Caterham this year. As I said, I think they'll get a point in the predictions video. They do look relatively quick, and Button also tipped them to be up there. Well, not up there, obviously, but trying to get points. But I did cover it a lot in the predictions video. But Bianchi is a solid driver, obviously, and he wants to prove he can get a top seat, and he is worth a top seat. And in my opinion, he should beat Chilton. I mean, he's pretty much beat him. He pretty much beat him for the whole of last year. So I mean, Bianchi may be the one to watch in the first few races when reliability will be an issue for a lot of teams. It may be an issue for Marussia, but Bianchi may be able to nurse the car well, and if he can do that, then it'll definitely look incredibly good. And moving on to Chilton now, he needs better qualifying, just more standout pace really and quickness, because he did finish every race last season, but the majority of them were in 22nd place, to be honest. So a point would really boost his career, really, to be honest, because that would really put him in the spotlight a bit more, because he hasn't really had much of that apart from the British media at some points. But you could say Chilton is a bit of a filler for other drivers coming through, so I do fear for him slightly. Bianchi should be relatively safe now that he's under Ferrari kind of tutelage. So Chilton is definitely going to have to work for it at Marussia to keep his drive for 2015. But moving on to Caterham, who obviously I made, who obviously I said I thought it would be their last season. I'm not even making sense at the moment, but I really do think it will be their last season, to be honest. As I said, Tony Fernandes put out that ultimatum, and I just don't think they're going to be able to develop into a point-scoring team ever, to be honest. And I mean, Fernandes will pull out. There'll be a lack of funding. With Toyota returning, that's going to be a big problem for them as well. There's no steps forward being made at that team, and I don't think there will be any this year. I mean, they are changing to the Lotus 2-pronged nose or double penetration nose, but I just can't see it happening, even with two pretty good drivers in Kobayashi and Ericsson. It's exciting to see Kobayashi back in the sport as well, I just point out, but I mean, he's definitely going to need to impress to get a drive next year as well. A lot of these drivers will have to do that this year. But I mean, Kobayashi, it's always nice to see him return, and a lot of people saying that he'll gain the most positions in the first few races just because his Banzai overtakes and obviously the reliability issues. So Kobayashi definitely one to watch out for in terms of excitement, but he may be slightly limited this year in a Caterham that may not be able to challenge too well. Moving on to the final driver, Marcus Ericsson. Great to see a Swedish guy back in Formula 1, we haven't seen that in ages. But much like Kvyat, I think it'll be a learning curve for him. And if he beats Kobayashi, that'll put him in good stead for the rest of his career. So people will start talking about him if he manages to do that. Got slightly distracted there, but that's pretty much it. I've blabbered on for about more than 30 minutes actually, so this is going to take a long time to upload once again. But yeah, that is the F1 2014 preview and Australia preview. I've got to wake up at 5:30 each morning to flip and catch it. I wish I was in Australia, to be honest. I wish I was Tim Murdoch or just someone in Australia. But yeah, this has been a great video. I'm really looking forward to Australia. My Monaco career mode video will be up probably Saturday afternoon, talking about the qualifying in the morning. So don't tune into that if you haven't seen what's happened. But obviously do tune in after you've seen it on the BBC if you didn't see it on Sky. And also I will do a race review after the Sunday race, probably that'll be up at probably Sunday afternoon, since I'll have time Sunday morning to put it together. Yes, I'm quick on the ball. But thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.